Hey guys, Brad here with B Squared Gaming. It's time for the fourth episode of my Hidden Gem Hunter series. Again, it's going to be about the Game Boy, and like I said last episode, it's going to be all original Game Boy games. The last one was pretty long, actually, so I'm going to keep the reviews a little short. I was a little long-winded last time, so I'll keep that short as well. But up for this episode, the fourth episode, it's going to be Turok, Battle of the Dinosaurs for the original Game Boy. Jeep Jamboree Off-Road Adventure for the original Game Boy. Motocross Maniacs. Like I said in my giveaway, this was going to be on one of my episodes, and here it is. Mousetrap Hotel. And Fortified Zone. So let's go ahead and get started.
B Squared Gaming.
Okay, so let's talk about Turok. It's an acclaimed game in Turok Battle of the Dinosaurs. I hope that's right. But anyways, this game is, I know it's a Turok game, but it's pretty unique from the first-person aspect of most Turok games. It's a 2D action platforming game for the original Game Boy. And also, a unique feature that it has, especially in the Game Boy era, is it's not a linear game. And what I mean by that is you're going to spend time exploring levels, going through portals, and then finding weapons and items that you need in order to open up areas in previous levels. And you do all this to find pieces of the Chrono Scepter, which is a weapon to help you defeat the final boss. The game does not limit you to a one-hit death scenario, so you have a bunch of health, and depending on which difficulty level you select will depend on how much health you have. So obviously, the easy difficulty level setting, you have a lot more health than the harder difficulty setting. You can also collect various items to help you replenish your health if you get hit throughout the game. Also, with this game, I mean, the graphics and animation, especially the animation, they're top-notch. I mean, from the running, the jumping, the climbing, the crawling, the shooting, just all that. Not enough can be said about the animation on this game. For the Game Boy era to have animation like this is just incredible, to me. A lot of games that you've played don't quite have the animation that this game has. The music does a great job setting the mood, and if you're exploring outside, it has an upbeat exploring mood that it sets, or if you're in a dungeon, the music gets nice and quiet and eerie like you're in a dungeon. So the music does a great job. The controls are great. The platforming isn't really an issue because the controls handle just like you want them to. Now, with that being said, this game only sells for $3. Now, how this game is not listed as one of those top Game Boy games is beyond me. And how this game isn't talked about more, I just don't get it. For $3, and with all the features that this game has, and I did forget to mention, it does have a password feature, so that re-exploring areas isn't quite an issue because you don't have to do it all in one go. So the password feature definitely sets this over the edge. $3 for an action platforming game. You need to go out and get this game, try it out, and you'll see what I mean. It's a really fun game to play. Go get it. It's truly a hidden gem for the original Game Boy. So Turok, go get it. Up next is Motocross Maniacs. Now, at first glimpse, you might think it's another subpar racing game for the Game Boy. The original Game Boy wasn't really well known for its racing games, of course. But once you start playing it, you can make the obvious comparison between this game and Excite Bike. But once you start playing it more, you can see that there's, I want to say, a lot more to this game than there is Excite Bike. As you play through the game, you can see that the tracks are a lot more challenging than the tracks in Excite Bike. There's loops and jumps, and another good thing about this game that other racing games fall short on having is the power-ups. You can get power-ups that upgrades your tires, increases your top speed, so it's nice to have that throughout the level that you can grab those. Also, turbo power-ups. And one of the things about this game that kind of gets frustrating after a while is at some spots in each of the levels, if you don't have any turbos, you'll get stuck and you can't progress through any further. So that kind of stinks. So you gotta use your turbos wisely, I guess. But overall, the graphics, I mean, it's a racing game. It's just similar to Excite Bike. The graphics are okay. The track looks okay. There's 3 modes. There's solo, which is like practice, where you can pick your track and just it's you racing against the clock. There's versus computer, which is like the racing. You're racing one other computer. And then there's also player versus player. Again, I can't play player versus player, no one to play with, but I can see where that probably would be fun. The controls in this game, the controls are good. They feel pretty responsive. Once you, just like Excite Bike, if you're too far back or too far forward when you're going down or landing and jump, it'll roll you off. So once you get used to that, it's a pretty easy game to master the controls on. This game does sell for $3. Also with the game, the music, it's just racing game stuff, so really nothing too much to talk about there. But like I said, this game does sell for about $2 to $3, and when you compare it to other racing games in the Game Boy era, this one does kind of stick out. It's fun to go back and play and try to master each of the levels. The nice thing about this game is that you can also select the levels at the beginning. So if you don't want to play the easy tracks, you can go right to the more difficult tracks. So that's nice. This game, for a racing game on the Game Boy, is definitely a hidden gem. One that you should probably pick up, give it a shot, especially if you like Excite Bike for the NES. There is an obvious comparison to that game, but it's a little bit different and a little bit more challenging. So, Motocross Maniacs. Up next is Mousetrap Hotel. Now, this is a platforming game where you play as Maxie the Mouse and you make your way through a hotel, and the goal is to get up to the penthouse. Now, as I said, it's a platforming game, so it has the usual obstacles that a platforming game has. You know, with the difficult jumps and then objects that you have to dodge. And with all that being said, it has pretty good elements to make a good platforming game, right? Not so much. Let's talk about graphics first. Now, the graphics of the game, there are power-ups in this game, but you can't tell what they are, first of all. And sometimes they blend in with the background, so you don't know that you're supposed to get them. Now, I'm assuming that it's a cookie and some cheese, but again, you can't really tell what they are. One of the unique things about this game, though, is that it uses the tail of the mouse as like a health bar. And what I mean by that is as you grab more power-ups, be it cheese or a cookie, your tail will grow. And if you get hit by a flying obstacle, if you get hit by a flying object, the tail will shorten a little bit. So that's how it kind of resembles a health bar. But also, with the tail being a tail, you can whip things coming at you, so you don't have to run or jump over them. So that's kind of a unique thing, the tail being the health bar and a weapon. It's kind of nice. Also, it has a nice map feature, but other than that, that's about it. Back to the graphics. The animation, even for a Game Boy game, the animation is pretty bad. I've seen some bad animation before, but I think Maxie the Mouse has 2 sprites, and that's it, when running anyways. But the controls of the game, the jump mechanism, it's awkward and it doesn't feel right. Other than that, the controls are okay, but it's just that jump. It's hard to master, I guess you could say, and with a platforming game, you have to be able to jump. The music, it does set a nice light upbeat tone, but after a while it gets kind of old, and there is no option to turn it off. And as a matter of fact, there is no options to this game at all. There's no password, no difficulty setting. You go right from the title screen to the first level, so that's it. There's no options at all. Now, that being said, this game does sell for about $6, and with the terrible graphics and animation, the mediocre music, the bad controls on a platforming game, and the fact that it sells for $6, I mean, for the Game Boy, there's a lot of action platformers and platformers out there, so this one just falls short. I wouldn't pick this one up at all, actually, for that price. It's a bad game. You might play it a little bit, but you'll get sick of it fast. Maybe if you're a hardcore platforming fan, you might want to pick this one up, but even then, I think I'd pass. So Mousetrap Hotel, not worth a pickup. Now it's time for Jeep Jamboree from the original Game Boy. Now Jeep Jamboree is obviously a racing game, and with the title, you can imagine it's all about racing Jeeps. Sounds pretty fun, right? Now, when you first put in this game, you get a selection where you enter your name, so that's kind of nice. And then you go right to the options where you select from the difficulty level if you want to see your speed in miles per hour or kilometers. Also, the steering, what side the steering at is going to be on, and also if you want to see the map of that. From there, you get to select if you want to do multiplayer, which it does have a multiplayer function if you have a link cable, so that's kind of a nice feature. But then, from there on out, it's just racing. There's no vehicle selection or anything like that, just straight up racing. The graphics in this game, it's a first-person racing game, so you're in the cockpit, or the driver's seat, I guess, of the Jeep. The graphics look really good. The other Jeeps and other vehicles that you see look great. The course and the backgrounds all look great as well. It does have a nice crash feature, which breaks the glass. Sometimes, and on some tracks, the course can kind of blend in with the background. But this really only affects a few tracks, not very many. The controls in the game, the Jeep handles like you want it to and like you would suspect it to handle. The only thing that I didn't like about this game is if you're driving and you're passing another Jeep, it might look like you're clear of that Jeep, but the collision area, you didn't clear it, so you hit it and you slow way down. Well, other than that, the game is pretty fun. Now, the music in this game, there really isn't any music, just in the options menu or any other menu that you have. The sound effects don't get annoying at all. A lot of times with engine noises, you can get really annoyed with them. But this does a great job. It's not annoying at all. The collision of the Jeep sound, that gets annoying because you're going to hear it a lot, but it's not that bad. Now the game does sell for $6 to $7, which is a little bit more expensive for the original Game Boy. And it doesn't have any upgrade features, so you can't upgrade your steering or your engine or anything like that. And to me, a racing game really should have some of those things, or at least vehicle selection. But this one is just straight, you're racing the same vehicle straight through. I'm really on the fence if I want to call this one a hidden gem. If you look at other racing games for the original Game Boy, this game, the graphics, the controls are really great, and they're probably better than most other games. It just really falls behind, and it doesn't have any customization to your vehicle. And because it sells for $6 to $7, I'm not going to rate this one a hidden gem. If you like racing games, especially for the Game Boy, a lot of racing games for the Game Boy are pretty much subpar, but if you like racing games for the Game Boy, try this one out. Tell me if you like it, but I'm not going to label this a hidden gem. Alright, and the last game is Fortified Zone. Now, Fortified Zone has that Metal Gear kind of feel to it. I guess it's because it's got the military style to it. You don't quite have to sneak around like you do in Metal Gear, and it's not as good as Metal Gear. But it's kind of similar. It's that top-down shooting or shooter kind of style of game. Also with Fortified Zone, it's a unique feature. You can switch between two characters. The male character can use special weapons that you can pick up throughout each level, and the female character can jump. She's also a little bit more agile, like fast moving. So those are the differences between the two characters that you can select from. You can pick up health packs to replenish your health. You can also pick up power-ups that increase your health bar. And also, like I said before, the special weapons you can pick up. Now, the graphics of the game, they're pretty good. I mean, the sprites of each of the characters and even the enemies, they seem a little bit too big, to be honest. The hitboxes are a little off. They're not quite what you would expect them to be. But overall, they're decent graphics. The gameplay, like I said, it's just like many games where you have to beat the enemy There's only 4 levels to this game, but each level progressively has more of an area that you have to explore. And then at the end of each level, there's a boss battle. The enemies and the bosses are actually pretty easy. There's nothing too challenging about this game. I guess the most challenging part of this game is exploring and trying to get all the keys to progress through each level. But like I said, it's a mediocre kind of difficulty level to this game. Now also, the controls to this game, they feel good. I mean, there's no sluggish reaction to the controls or anything like that. It shoots when you want it to shoot. I think there is, though, if there's too many enemies on the screen, some of the bullets don't fire. So that limitation to the Game Boy, you can see that in this game particularly. But that doesn't really get in the way too bad. Like I said before, the graphics are okay. Nothing to write home about or anything like that. They just look like normal Game Boy graphics. The animation to each of the characters is actually decent. The music to the game, the music does do a decent job setting the mood. It definitely picks up and gets a little bit better in the later levels, but it doesn't get annoying or anything like that. Overall, I mean, this game is kind of a mediocre game. I can see why this game has been overlooked or maybe not remembered as well as many other games for the Game Boy. But overall, it's a solid, well, decently rounded game. It sells for about $5, and for that reason, it sells for $5. And yes, I know it's not an overly challenging game. It's fairly easy and kind of short. It does have a password feature, but like I said before, it's kind of short, so you could probably sit through and play through this whole game. It's just right there on the edge, but I am gonna list this one as a hidden gem. It's nothing that, I mean, it doesn't excel in any one particular area, but it's a decent game to pick up and play. Fortified Zone for the original Game Boy. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think about it. It is a hidden gem, just not one that is super spectacular. It's just right there, solid game. Okay, so there you have it for this episode of Hidden Gem. We talked about 5 original Game Boy games. The first one was Turok. Definitely a fun action-adventure game. It's got a lot of good graphics and animation to it. There's a lot to this game, so you're not going to probably be able to play it all in one go, but there is a password system. So this game's definitely worth a pickup and playing through. Definitely a hidden gem. The next game was Motocross Maniacs. Obvious comparison to Excitebike for the NES. It's a racing game, motorcycle racing game. The tracks are a bit challenging at times, especially if you don't have those turbos like I talked about. Definitely worth a pickup, and it's a hidden racing game, which there aren't very many of those for the Game Boy, but definitely a hidden gem for a racing title on the Game Boy. Mousetrap Hotel. Really, it's not a good game at all. It's challenging as far as the platforming goes, just because the controls are pretty bad. The animation is terrible. It does have one unique feature that I did like about it, and that was the tail being the health bar and a weapon, like I talked about. But other than that, this game, I wouldn't pick this one up. It's not a hidden gem. If you like platformers and you got to play them, then obviously this is a platformer, you should pick it up. But other than that, stay away from it. Jeep Jamboree, another racing title for the original Game Boy. Still on the fence with this one. The graphics are pretty good. The first-person racing, it's like I said, the graphics are good. It just doesn't have that customization to your vehicle or even a vehicle selection. So I didn't rate this one a hidden gem. It was right on the fence, but I don't know. I'm just not a big racing fan for the original Game Boy, and this one, if it had those power-ups, perhaps, but it doesn't. So. And then Fortified Zone. Like I said, mediocre game, easily forgotten about because it doesn't have any of those things that pops out at you. But it's a solid game, well-rounded, I guess. Definitely fun to play through, so I did rate this one a hidden gem. Was on the fence with this one too, but this one just tilted to the other way as a hidden gem. So Fortified Zone. So there you go. 3 hidden gems and 2 not so much. But had holiday season, obviously, so this took a little bit longer than I wanted it to. You probably won't see another video from me until after the holidays. I do have one more in mind that I want to try to get up, but we'll see how my time is. But that's it for this episode of Hidden Gem Hunter. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks.